Today, we are diving into one of the heaviest, most silently carried realities of being human. We're talking about the intergenerational transmission of pain, and exactly how we finally break the chain. Let's just get right into it. Picture this scenario. It's the end of an absolutely grueling day. You are utterly exhausted, running completely on fumes, and your nervous system is stretched to its absolute breaking point. Your child pushes a boundary. Maybe they spill a glass of juice all over the floor, or they just flat out refuse to put on their shoes when you're already late. And suddenly, it happens. Out of your mouth flies the exact cruel phrase, the precise chilling tone of voice, or the icy withdrawal tactic that you absolutely despised hearing from your own parents when you were little. In that split second, you aren't hearing your own voice. You are hearing their echo. And then, almost instantly, comes the agonizing shock. That deep, visceral remorse hits you like a ton of bricks. You look at your child's face and you just think, how could I? I literally swore to myself I would never do to them what was done to me. Listen to me very carefully right now. We are not here to shame you. If you have experienced this terrifying moment, you are not a monster. You are not a broken, terrible parent. You are experiencing a profoundly deep-rooted biological phenomenon, and today we are going to unpack exactly why this happens in your body so you can stop it for good. So, let's look at the unvarnished neurobiological truth of what's happening inside your head in that exact moment. When you're well-rested and feeling safe, your prefrontal cortex is fully active. Think of this as the sophisticated, conscious captain of your brain, the part that is highly capable of empathy, logic, and deep emotional connection. But when extreme fatigue or chronic stress depletes that cortex, the captain essentially leaves the bridge. Your brain abandons reason because it honestly believes it's under life or death threat. And in a state of perceived threat, it violently shifts gears into primitive lower cortical systems. You are thrust entirely into absolute survival mode. Now, in that primal survival mode, your brain relies on what clinical psychology calls an automated script. This is purely an evolutionary fallback mechanism. When your nervous system is drowning in overwhelm, it literally does not have the caloric energy to invent a new, gentle, conscious parenting technique. It grabs the deepest, oldest, most deeply etched reflex it has on how to handle overwhelming relational stress. This reaction is not a moral failing on your part. It is a biological default. It's triggered by an extreme survival overload that forces all your unintegrated emotional pain roaring straight to the surface.
This brings us to a foundational concept, the internalized parental voice. See, as children, our brains are essentially brilliant little survival machines. To stay safe and keep our caretakers close, we have to hyper-adapt to them. We deeply, unconsciously absorb their opinions, their reactions, and their relational habits. We immerse ourselves completely in their emotional language, even if that language happens to be incredibly harsh, critical, or dismissive. We absorb it so thoroughly that it becomes our own inner commentary, lying completely dormant in our nervous system until high stress forces it to wake up. I want you to take a breath and just let this crucial realization sink in. You do not repeat the cycle because you agree with it. You repeat it because it was your brain's only survival script. This is such a profoundly compassionate realization. When you snapped at your child, you were not endorsing your parents' cruelty. Not at all. You were simply echoing the only emotional language you were ever taught to speak when your back was against the wall.
And this biological default doesn't just happen in a vacuum, it weaves into a much wider systemic reality. We call this the multi-generational transmission process. It means that emotional processes and unintegrated traumas are transmitted from generation to generation almost identically to a genetic imprint. Chronic thrumming anxiety is passed down the family line. True emotional autonomy gets blocked because family members become fused. They rely on each other to unconsciously regulate their own anxiety. And under stress, those lower cortical systems completely dominate, steering the ship using those implicit, invisible relationship maps etched into your brain during infancy.
You can really see how these repeating patterns of family emotional functioning cascade down over decades. Chronic anxiety travels through the family system over time like an invisible electrical current. It constantly pushes individuals into automated, knee-jerk reactivity. So instead of being highly differentiated, self-regulated individuals who can stand calm in the middle of a storm, family members become desperately entangled. They pass the exact same unresolved tensions down to their children, who then inevitably pass it to theirs.
Now you might be wondering, if it hurts so much, why on earth do we keep doing it? Well, it's because the most primitive, ancient parts of our brain have one primary overriding goal. They desperately seek safety and familiarity.
We unconsciously gravitate toward and replicate painful childhood dynamics simply because they are a known entity. Your primitive brain basically says, look, I survived this exact chaos before, so I know how the rules work here. Even if it's deeply destructive, that familiarity feels neurologically safer to the primitive brain than the wild, unknown vulnerability of true emotional intimacy.
This dynamic creates a literal contagion of distress. When an emotionally depleted, chronically stressed parent cannot manage their own inner turmoil, they unconsciously project that unintegrated trauma outward onto the closest available target. The parent is essentially communicating, I cannot hold this massive amount of pain, so you must carry it for me. This creates a heartbreaking role reversal. The innocent child is forced to absorb and manage the parent's anxiety, sacrificing their own natural emotional development just to keep their caretaker stable.
Which leads us to a truly chilling reality, perfectly captured in this insight. What cannot be communicated to the mother cannot be communicated to the self. When a child cannot safely express their pain, their fear, or their normal needs to their caretaker, because they know the caretaker will withdraw, attack, or emotionally collapse, the child learns to dissociate. They bury the feeling alive. The emotional trauma is left completely unintegrated, sitting in the dark like an unexploded landmine, just waiting to be triggered decades later when they reach adulthood.
And the hidden costs of carrying this unintegrated pain are absolutely staggering. This childhood emotional void leaves your adult nervous system permanently trapped in a state of high alert. It breeds deep, agonizing emotional loneliness, a pervasive feeling of emptiness even when you're in a room full of people who love you. It can lead to alexithymia, which is the sheer, baffling inability to even sense or name what you are feeling in your own body. It causes chronic physical tension and ultimately a tragic loss of self-regulation. It is a silent force that slowly erodes the bedrock of a person's life. So, we have to pause and ask the most important question. How does this invisible force manage to hijack us today? You are an adult now. You love your children fiercely, with everything you have. You have a deep, intensely conscious desire to be a radically different kind of caregiver than the ones you grew up with. Yet, in those brief moments of absolute exhaustion, this invisible force completely overrides all your boundless love and all your rational logic. How does it do that?
It happens because of the blind spot of emotional immaturity. Because you were emotionally neglected or overwhelmed as a child, your brain possesses a neurological blind spot when it comes to navigating intense, raw, messy emotions. When your child has a massive meltdown, it instantly triggers the exact same primal terror you felt as a child when emotions were profoundly unsafe. Your nervous system hits the panic button, and you become incredibly, dangerously vulnerable to reverting to those harsh, critical echoes just to shut the scary emotion down, exactly like your parents did to you.
Listen to this closely. The unrelenting presence of these negative messages can do more damage than the parent. The internalized parental voice essentially usurps your true self. When you are worn down to nothing, that imported, inherited script steps right up to the microphone in your brain. It isn't actually your voice. It isn't your true, loving self speaking to your child. It is a ghost. It's a phantom echo from a past you are desperately trying to escape. To actually break free from this, we have to understand the vast difference between two distinct states of being. The reactive state is entirely automated. It's driven 100% by lower cortical panic and that multi-generational inherited anxiety we talked about. In this state, you are regulated by the chaos around you. Now contrast that with the differentiated state. This is where you are beautifully self-regulated. You are consciously separated from the emotional fusion of the past, totally capable of standing firmly in your own identity, and crucially, capable of observing a chaotic situation without immediately reacting to it. And here is the single most powerful paradigm shift of this entire explainer. That deep, stomach-dropping horror you feel when you catch yourself repeating the toxic cycle, that gut-wrenching, agonizing guilt, that is actually the cure. I want you to start framing that horror as a massive, positive biological signal. It means you are not completely asleep at the wheel like the generations that came before you. It means your conscious self is finally, painfully waking up to the transmission. The horror means your true self is actively rejecting the imported script. Breaking this heavy generational spell happens in an incredible, commanding three-step sequence. First, there's automation. The triggered reaction inevitably happens, the old script fires off. Second, witnessing. This is where the real magic happens. You observe the horror. You catch yourself red-handed in the act. And, crucially, you do not defend it. You don't rationalize it or blame your child for pushing your buttons. Third, liberation. You recognize clearly that this ugly echo is not your true self, forever separating your core self-worth from that automated biological reaction. Witnessing halts the transmission. Let me say that again so it really registers. Just the simple, incredibly courageous act of witnessing the automated script halts its destructive momentum. By observing the internal echo, by hearing yourself sound exactly like your critical parent, stopping mid-sentence, taking a deep breath, and flat out refusing to act on it or justify it, you successfully sever your true self from the inherited emotional trauma. You literally step out of the rushing river of generational anxiety. And as you repeatedly do this, you begin the profound work of reclaiming your biological self, following the visceral, terrifying pathways of your own heartbreak, and actually daring to sit with the pain of what you lacked as a child, allows you to finally get back in touch with your physical body. You stop floating away in dissociation. You slowly transform from feeling like nobody into being somebody, a deeply grounded, present human being who is finally capable of genuine, safe, and beautiful intimacy with your children.
This raw awareness marks the absolute beginning of true emotional differentiation. You are no longer a helpless puppet dancing to the ghosts of the past. You are stepping into a fully conscious, sovereign legacy. By doing this incredibly hard, deeply contemplative inner work, you are building a massive, impenetrable firewall. You are ensuring with absolute authority that the pain stops with you and that a liberated, emotionally fluent future officially begins for the next generation. Which brings us to the definitive, monumentally powerful thesis of everything we've explored today. We often repeat what hurt us, not because we agree with it, but because it became the only emotional language we were taught under stress. Please let that absolute truth completely absolve you of your shame right now. But let it also be the ultimate catalyst for your transformation, because the beautiful thing about language is you can always learn a new one. You are completely awake now. The spell is broken. You know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it is just an echo. So I leave you with this final thought. Now that you can clearly hear the echo, how will you consciously rewrite your family's emotional language? The pen is finally, firmly in your hands. Thank you for diving so deeply into this with me. Take this profound awareness, be incredibly gentle with yourself, and go build your beautiful new legacy.